Be Wealthy and Smart, episode 1363.
Step into a world of wealth and financial freedom without budgets, boredom, or bosses on Be Wealthy and Smart. And now, here's your host, Linda P. Jones.
Welcome to Be Wealthy and Smart. I'm Linda P. Jones, America's Wealth Mentor, empowering women and men worldwide to financial freedom. On today's show, we're going to talk about a very important subject. Is the gold standard coming back? Now, this is something that a lot of people have been speculating about, but we rarely see this addressed in mainstream media. Not that the mainstream media is the end-all be-all anymore, because we've found that they definitely shy away from certain topics that are happening. But when mainstream media does cover a topic, it means they want us to know something is coming, perhaps, or something might be changing, or perhaps something we need to be educated more about. I don't know why this article appeared in Forbes on May 21st of 2024, but it did. And I think it's important that we talk about it, because there's a lot of assumptions that people make and a lot of opinions that people have. And the fact that we used to be on a gold standard may not be the same way we're going to be on a gold standard if indeed we do go back to a gold standard. Now, for a long time, I've been talking about a new financial system coming, and that this has been underway for many, many years. That's definitely something the mainstream media typically doesn't cover. At least they don't put all the pieces together and spell it out for us. But what I want to share today is what Forbes shared with us, and then adding some of the pieces that perhaps they aren't including in this article. So this article is entitled, "The Signs Are There, the Gold Standard is Coming Back." And it was written by Steve Forbes and the Forbes staff. And it says, "It's hard to believe, but the world is beginning to lurch toward a gold-based monetary system. This, despite the fact that the historical gold standard is held in almost universal contempt by economists and financial officials. Contrary to numerous myths based on ignorance, the system worked. The U.S. was on a gold-based system for 180 years until the early 1970s. We never had inflation when the dollar's value was tied to the yellow metal, and the U.S. experienced the greatest long-term economic growth in human history." So I just want to pause there and say that might have gotten your attention, that we had no inflation. Inflation comes from creating too much currency, and creating too much currency debases the value of the currency, which is essentially inflation. So if we want to get off this inflationary roller coaster, we need to go to a new financial system that can eliminate inflation. And that's the easiest way to explain why we need to go to a new financial system. That's the point of not being on a fiat currency, is that you have a limited amount of supply of gold, which limits the amount of money that can be created. And that stability of not being able to create more money keeps your money from being debased, which is the problem that the world is facing now with fiat currencies being printed into oblivion, essentially. All right, the article goes on to say, since the greenback's link to gold was severed, our average historic growth rates have fallen by about a third. Median household income today would be at least $40,000 higher if our traditional pattern of growth for those 180 years had been maintained. Let me repeat that. Median household income today would be at least $40,000 higher for your income. Okay, we're talking median income. If our traditional pattern of growth for those 180 years had been maintained, if we had stayed on the gold standard, your median income, median means half the people earning above and half the people earn below that amount, it would be $40,000 higher income for people. Wow, that's very significant. Nevertheless, the contumely and scorn for a gold-based monetary system is universal. Events, though, have a particular way of forcing things once unthinkable into the forefront of consideration and then into reality. According to Forbes, the signs of change are here. It goes on to say, one is that central banks in recent years have been purchasing gold at record levels. Buyers include China, India, Russia, and a number of other nations such as Poland. These countries are reacting to growing doubts about the long-term value of the dollar, which in turn is a symptom of the perceived decline of the United States. So I want to pause there. So basically, they're saying that the BRICS nations, it's more than just China, India, and Russia, and Poland, but it's the BRICS nations, and it's in a new banking system that is requiring banks to have certain deposit levels, and they're recognizing gold as the same as cash for the first time in many years. So they're now saying you can have cash in your bank as an asset, or you can have gold in your bank as an asset, and either one is equally as good. That's a huge change, and people aren't really talking about that. So it's more than just the BRICS nations or these four nations they mentioned. This is a worldwide phenomenon that also impacts the banking system, which has caused banks, in most cases, to add gold to their balance sheet. But it also says that this is in reaction to growing doubts about the long-term value of the dollar. Well, we know that the purchasing power is now down to 2 cents out of the original dollar created in 1913. So the purchasing power has lost 98%. So we can barely buy anything with our money anymore. That's why houses are so expensive. It's because the dollar's value has been declining. And this is something that not only impacts the United States, but the entire world, since we buy so many goods and services around the world, and since the dollar has been the world's reserve currency. So this is something that has been foreseeable for a long time, and these cycles of fiat money losing value have happened repeatedly in history. This is not the first time this has happened. So this was a foreseeable event that we would need to go on a new financial system. We would need to reboot the system back to something of value. And by the way, that's what happens every time a fiat currency fails, is they go back to a system that is backed by gold or possibly other assets. Let's continue on with this article and see what it says next. Another sign is the popularity of cryptocurrencies, originally a high-tech cry for help in the face of increasingly unreliable fiat currencies. The problem here has been that most creators of cryptos, notably Bitcoin, don't understand that a currency must be stable in value if it's going to be used to conduct commercial transactions, especially long-term contracts. There are a handful of cryptos tethered to gold, but they haven't yet achieved the credibility or built the mechanisms to be widely used. Nonetheless, as governments flounder in their monetary policies, that will change. All right, so I want to pause there and let's talk about Bitcoin. So one of the reasons why Bitcoin has been successful is because it had a limited number of Bitcoin. And that's why it's talked about as a popular store of value. It has a set limited number of Bitcoin. That's what has allowed Bitcoin to take off in terms of popularity. But there's problems with Bitcoin and why it can't be used as a currency. Namely, we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. That's a problem. Number two, it doesn't maintain stable value. So what does maintain stable value? Well, something called a stablecoin is a digital version of a currency that maintains stable value of $1. And we have a stablecoin through Circle, which we've invested in their private equity, and understand that they're offering a stablecoin. USDC is something that will be backed by assets, audited, and will be accepted as money as soon as the stablecoin law goes into effect later this year. We also have Ripple Labs, who came out with the announcement this year they will have 2 stablecoins coming out. And those stablecoins will run on the XRP ledger and on Ethereum. And those 2 stablecoins are going to have stable value. And again, be audited, maintain its dollar value, have assets behind it, all the things that you need to have real money. And then when the laws come in and we get legalization of stablecoins, that means stablecoins become real money. So we'll have a digital version of the dollar available later this year. And the difference between the stablecoins that we have now and the stablecoins after we have legislation is the difference between crypto that's not recognized under the law as a currency and having laws put in place that recognize stablecoins as currency and legally say they now represent real money. As Jeremy Allaire, CEO of Circle, said last year, that 2024 was the year that stablecoins would become real money. And that's what he meant. We need the laws in order to make the stablecoins that we have today real money. Not just crypto, but real money. It goes on to say, the binge of debt creation, both public and private, will inevitably kindle crises that cannot be easily extinguished. Total debt in the world today is more than $300 trillion, an astonishing 3 times global GDP, or gross domestic product. So $300 trillion is more debt that can ever be repaid in multiple generations, even if everyone on the planet were taxed 100% of their income for multiple generations. It can't be repaid. It's too big. So what has to happen is that debt is going to have to go away. So it's my belief that eventually that debt is going to have some form of forgiveness because it can never be repaid. Now, while that might sound outrageous, just remember the way the monetary system works right now is when the Federal Reserve creates money, debt is created. But if we were creating money the way the Constitution tells us to create money, which is through our Treasury, no debt would be created. So we're creating needless debt by having a Federal Reserve. And that's why if we don't have the Federal Reserve and we go under our treasuries globally, countries can issue their own money without debt and move forward in a way that we wouldn't have the same problem. And that's what I believe is happening. The article goes on to say, and of course we have the activities of the so-called BRICS, originally Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and a year later South Africa, which now includes several other countries. Oil giant Saudi Arabia is also considering joining. Their monetary machinations so far have amounted to little, but that's starting to shift. And recently we had the rumor that the contract between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, the petrodollar contract, buying Saudi oil with the U.S. dollar, ended just a few days ago. India last year began experimenting with gold-based government bonds. Monetary expert Nathan Lewis, who co-authored our book Inflation, What It Is, Why It's Bad, and How to Fix It, observes these would probably be very popular with investors worldwide. From the start of the floating currency era in 1971 to the present, a gold bond paying 4% would have outperformed all stock and bond markets worldwide. Zimbabwe, which must hold the record for hyperinflation, recently announced the launch of a new currency fixed to gold. Deep skepticism is warranted that this government has the discipline to make such an arrangement work, but the move is a sign of things to come. End of article. Yeah, Zimbabwe putting their dollar on the gold standard is going to stop the hyperinflation that they've experienced in that country. It is the solution. And that is really the first country to put this gold standard into practice, and perhaps is showing us that this is the trend that other countries are going to follow. So we'll continue to watch this trend. I think the important thing here is to understand that, in my opinion, the best investment is in the cryptocurrency that is going to be backed by gold. And if they're digitizing the dollar and you have an opportunity to invest in companies that back those stablecoins, such as Ripple and Circle, I think that is a good area of investment, which is why we have invested in those private equity companies in the VIP experience, but also the cryptocurrency XRP, which I believe is the foundation for the new financial system. And this announcement by Ripple that they are coming out with 2 stablecoins this year was not a small announcement. That's very major. It's going to be extremely good for Ripple, for their profitability, and for all of us in this new financial system. So we'll keep following the story and see what happens, but I just wanted to bring this article to your attention and give you a little bit of commentary along the way, because we're starting to be spoon-fed a little bit about perhaps what's coming in the future. If you haven't yet subscribed to Be Wealthy and Smart, hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified as soon as new podcasts are available. And all of my podcasts are on my website at lindapjones.com/podcasts. And while you're there, sign up for my weekly newsletter for more wealth tips for your financial freedom. That's all for today. Until next time, live the good life and be wealthy and smart.
Thank you for listening to Be Wealthy and Smart with Linda P. Jones. Share the wealth and tell your family and friends about the show. Check out our website, blog, and social media for more riches at www.bewealthyandsmart.com.